Here's another terrible idea in a long list of terrible ideas coming from Let's Go Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago. Johnson floats corporate head tax to help close Chicago budget deficit. Now, he's already said he's not going to raise taxes because property taxes in Chicago are the highest in the nation. New report just came out. So he's got to close that budget somehow. Hey, let's go after businesses. Genius idea or no? Let's get into it. Here we go.
The mayor made it clear he is considering a corporate head tax. He also floated perhaps increasing the tax on digital advertising. Let's start with, what is a head tax? The head tax is what a company based in the city would pay per employee, usually businesses with more than 50 people on the payroll. Companies in some cities pay from $5 to $6 per employee per month. Seattle has a tax only on high earners, those making more than $150,000 a year.
And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the impact that that's had, specifically Amazon in Seattle.
Former Mayor Rahm Emanuel eliminated the head tax 9 years ago, calling it a job killer. Mayor Johnson disagrees.
It's on the table. Everything has to be on the table. Everything has to be on the table.
What about cuts to your ridiculous social programs? How about that? What about we just make some cuts to existing programs that clearly don't need funding? Are you going to be willing to do that? No. More taxes.
The job killer.
Well, look, the job killers right now are situations.
Sorry, what? What? That was the response? He's looking in his brain for an answer. He is looking. He's not coming up with anything. And what you do there is you just say a bunch of stuff until you can figure it out. But look at his eyes. His eyes are just, he got nothing.
I continue to not speak to addressing violence. Again.
I'm sorry. What? What did you say? Gosh darn it.
Addressing violence. Again, come to me again. Situations that continue to not speak to addressing violence. Again, when corporate leaders come to me, the number one issue they talk about is safety. That's what they talk about. They don't talk about job killing.
At the same time, several businesses from Boeing to Citadel, they've left Chicago complaining about the rising costs. The Chicago Teachers Union, Mayor Johnson's strongest supporter, has been pushing for a corporate head tax for years.
Of course they have.
Digital advertising, charging a tax for that.
Another progressive revenue idea. Yes, there is this proposal that also CTU is supporting. The union projects it could solve the budget hole. That is, of course, if the city council agrees to a digital ad tax. The plan is to impose a 10% tax on digital advertising. This means a tax on Facebook, Instagram, and others. Critics suggest the tax would be passed on to the consumers. The state of Maryland, it is currently in a court over this, a lawsuit over a similar proposal. However, the digital tax, it is on the table.
I've long been a supporter of the placing revenue lines with our digital ads. Look, people have made billions of dollars from the digital industry, literally billions of dollars, and that free advertisement happens on a consistent basis. So this
free advertisement? What are you talking about? People pay for it. They're already paying for it. And now you're going to layer a tax on it. This guy, and this is emblematic of what the Democrats are facing in many big blue Democrat-led cities across America. You've got all these programs, you got all this suck for the resources, and you're going to have to tax the F out of your constituents in order to meet your budget. Otherwise, we're not funding stuff today.
It's something that I've been looking at and exploring since 2018.
Sure you have. Let's go, Brandon. We've seen what happens in Seattle, and in fact, let's just jump there, right? Let's just jump there real quick. Amazon moving out of Seattle office tower near headquarters. Amazon plans to reduce its Seattle area footprint and move out of a Denny Triangle office building that had just loaded up with homeless. You had story after story after story of extreme violence coming out of the Denny Triangle. And then you got this corporate head tax, and the move comes as Seattle area companies continue to evaluate their office footprints in Seattle. Amazon has focused its employee growth in Bellevue, where I am, rather than its original campus in Seattle, shifting about 800 employees from Met Park North. So the total count is supposed to be somewhere around 20,000 moving to Bellevue when it's all said and done. I mean, just some massive, massive numbers. Company also moved employees earlier this year after it declined to renew its lease in Seattle's West 8th Tower. Moving away from Seattle because Seattle has a corporate head tax and Seattle is anti-business. They want to tax the F out of businesses, and it's pushing businesses out. And businesses don't want to have leased space in a city where their employees are, safety risk. They're at the mercy of whatever street urchins are running around on the street. So you've got a number of different factors there on top of Seattle City Council has been, historically, it has been anti-business. Tax Amazon, literally one of the big campaigns from 𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗣𝗏, our resident local Democratic Socialist of America member. Seattle weighs latest Amazon tax as companies expand in business-friendly Bellevue. Business group criticizes proposed tax on millionaires to fund 2,000 affordable housing units. If you're going to promise that you're going to fund all of this just ridiculousness, and I'm not saying affordable housing units, but if you don't have the budget to do it and you got to come up with it from somewhere, what are you going to do? I'm going to skip down to Amazon in recent years has moved thousands of employees from Seattle and other locations to nearby Bellevue across Lake Washington. Fast-growing city has resisted imposing a tax on high earners, such as Seattle's proposed Initiative 137 or the Jumpstart levy passed in 2020. It requires businesses with at least $7 million in annual payroll to pay a tax for all their Seattle employees who make at least $180,000 a year. Anti-business. Bellevue hasn't done that. Bellevue won't do that. Bellevue doesn't have the crazy social programs because we are Democrat-led, but they're moderate Democrats. I know. A lot of you don't believe that there's such a thing. But if you come and walk the streets of Bellevue and then you go, a quick 10 miles to the west over to Seattle, it is absolutely night and day. Here's what I want you to do. If you question that, and if you're in the area, walk around downtown Bellevue's main city park, and then go walk around Cal Anderson Park, which is loaded up with over 30 homeless tents. It's got a wide range of drug addicts. You got some human trafficking going on. You got some buying and selling of stolen goods. You've got shenanigans going on for days. I mean, that's the location of the old Chop Jazz. Compare that park, what's going on there in Seattle, to what's happening in Bellevue. It's not a hard call. And then for businesses, it's Amazon plans to more than double its Bellevue presence to 25,000 jobs in the coming years, about half of the company's 50,000 corporate employees in Seattle. I mean, it's just not that hard to figure out. With expansions in recent months to Bellevue by TikTok parent ByteDance and Pokemon, among other companies, we've got businesses all day long here. But it's because Bellevue is pro-business. It really is. It wants businesses to get up and running because it wants their tax revenue, but it wants it old school, meaning it's going to be business friendly. Seattle, not so much. Seattle, borderline communist when it comes to big business. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has vowed not to propose property tax hikes to close the city's budget deficit, but floated the idea of a variety of corporate taxes to help do so. He's talking about progressive taxes. He's going to use progressive revenue, which is basically just tax the rich. Okay, you hear the Democrat mantra, we need corporate to pay their fair share. If you look at the absolute dollars that corporate and the wealthy pay versus what, the other 98%, it's shocking. It is shocking. And you're left with, what are they talking about? Well, it's because their constituents aren't real bright and they go, okay, all right. One of those taxes would be a corporate head tax, which could assess a tax for each employee. Large corporations employ within city limits. That doesn't say, hey, bring more business here. So that drives out businesses. Businesses need less office space. Your downtown core suffers more from the tax revenue standpoint. All the taxes that businesses pay, that gets reduced. And then you got to look elsewhere to create your revenue. You're going to have to tax something else. What are you going to do? You going to cut programs? Let's go. Brandon Johnson isn't. No, it's gonna keep expanding because doing such a great job that it's working. It's an option, Johnson said during a press availability Tuesday. We're on pace to build 10,000 affordable homes. Okay. I also made a commitment to hire 200 more detectives, right? Well, yeah, you got a city budget. It's $1 billion upside down. Okay. Whatever you say there. Let's go, Brandon. I said we're going to hire more young people. Isn't that ageism? I mean, what about the old people? You're not hiring old people? I'm kind of kidding, but I mean, I get what he's saying, but it's just his optics are terrible. We're going to hire more young people. We're going to hire more sexy young people. He didn't say that, but he might as well have, right? Those old people, they can just, let's push them off a bridge. Who needs them? Right? We're going to reopen mental health clinics. Okay. We're going to get the funding for that. There's a lot of things I said I was going to do. This is the perfect time for us to now look at progressive means. There's progressive. Tax the rich. So that we can continue to demonstrate the positive trend here. Positive trend. You got the highest property taxes in the United States. Is that positive? Positive. How about that? How about that little gun violence issue you got there? I mean, gang violence issue you got going on there. How about that? Oh, don't want to talk about that. Can't talk about that. During Johnson's campaign for mayor, he had proposed restarting the corporate head tax that former Mayor Rahm Emanuel had eliminated in 2011. And Chicago has been able to attract some world-class businesses over the last, 10, 15 years? I mean, Chicago's always had a presence, but they've been really able to do some damage. Now we're going the opposite way. And for the last few years, like since the pandemic, business after business after business is like, Chicago got a little expensive. No can do. Johnson had proposed imposing a $4 per employee tax on large companies and anticipated that it would generate, get this, 25 million in annual revenue. Let's see. I am no mathematician. Highest level I got was a couple of quarters of business calculus, University of Washington. Fine education. I didn't graduate. Don't care. 25 million. So we got $1 billion divided by 25 million. Yeah, you're not closing the gap there, dude. You're not even close. Why are you even talking about this? Well, he's saying nothing is off the table. Nothing's off the table. All right. I bet. I am really curious. You are looking at these big cities that have gone in these directions. How about how much has Chicago devoted to the criminal illegal aliens in their community with all of the handouts they've given? How much did Chicago, 330 million, something like that? Some enormous number? Some massive, massive number? I could be completely off there. Probably am. But it's some number where you're like, oh, so that money could have been spent elsewhere, and maybe that $1 billion hole wouldn't be quite so big. That's a big hole you got there, Brandon. Whew. City's projected budget deficit for fiscal year 2026 is $1.12 billion. But hey, let's really shave that baby down to 25 by increments of 25 million. Let's see, 25 times 4 is 100 grand. 100 times 10 is, you get where I'm going. What are you doing there? While Johnson ruled out the idea of raising property taxes because his $300 million property tax raise he was going to do was met with such ferocious opposition, like 52 or 55 to 0. Was the city council, the aldermen, whatever they do in Chicago, was the vote against raising property taxes because Chicago already has really high taxes. I've said this many times before. I'm a former appraiser. I'm a current appraiser-ish. I talk about it. Yeah, that counts, right? Yeah, I'm a consultant. No, I own an appraisal company and a real estate brokerage. And when you look at assessed values, then you look at the corresponding taxes. If you're from the Pacific Northwest and you're not used to seeing that level of taxation based on that assessed value, you look at Chicago and you're like, wait a minute, that's got to be a mistake. Is that a mistake? Are these people for that house? Are these people paying that much in taxes? Are you kidding me? We actually have pretty low taxes here in the state of Washington. Housing. We've got some pretty high assessed values, but that's because our values have, absolutely gone through the roof. Home I am in now has probably gone up, probably, 7 times in value since I've had it since when did I buy that? 2004, 2005, something like that. I mean, it's an insane number. It's a long time to own a house, but my taxes haven't gone up incrementally that direction either, right? So Pacific Northwest becoming almost just unaffordable for anybody but the wealthy. And the taxes that Chicago's already paying are just like cringe. You're like, good Lord, where are those people coming up with that money? It's likely that will be part of the package, CFO Jill Jaworski said. Again, we haven't rolled out the full package yet, but the package is going to include cuts, and it's going to include proposals for increasing our revenues. He didn't want to come right out and say taxes. I mean, how we're going to increase our revenue. What is that going to look like? So, where's that other? Yeah, here's that other. This is that other headline. I'm not going to read it. Illinois now has the highest property tax burden. I mean, these things are going in the wrong direction. They're going in the wrong direction, and they're going to keep going there because you've got leadership that, has boxed themselves in with all of these commitments to these progressive ideals that they can no longer afford. When you got $1 billion deficit and you're looking at 25 million, I'm not saying, you get what I'm saying. Hey, this is a terrible idea on top of all the other terrible ideas, but I recognize you got to do something somewhere. So how many of these tax cuts or how many of these, progressive revenue streams are you going to have to implement to get to $1 billion? You're going to have to raise taxes in Chicago. You're going to have to raise taxes in Illinois. And people are freaking out, and I don't blame them because they're already super high. And for what they're getting, well, I mean, you got to be able to, how else are you going to be able to afford your hundreds of millions of dollars to the criminal illegals? How else are you going to be able to afford that? So when you've got leadership making terrible decisions on top of making terrible decisions on making terrible decisions like in Seattle, our city council has kind of worked that backwards a little bit. They've got some more moderate Democrats running the show now. But even still, Amazon has said, hey, we recognize that you tax Amazon. Hashtag tax Amazon was a concerted push. That's not business friendly. That is socialism. That's communism. Tax? Yeah, it's straight up, right? So, lesson learned here. Don't be Seattle. Don't be Chicago. But the trend moving forward, that's going to be the fascinating thing because when you've got a budget, you're going to have to cut something. You're going to have to cut something. And more than likely a combination of that with more taxes, which let's go Brandon Johnson, his big thing, no new property taxes. Be wild to figure out how this goes, right? See how this goes. It's going to be a fun run. It's going to be a fun run. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.